Minecraft is a really fun game, and it's something that I've played an awful lot of over the years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect. For me personally, there's a handful of small little tweaks that could be made to some of the basic elements to make it a little bit more enjoyable to play. So today we're going to be taking a look at 25 of them. The first one is the fact that beds always set your spawn when you sleep in them. It doesn't matter where you place the bed, or if you don't want to set the spawn in the bed, when you sleep in a bed, it sets your spawn. One thing that I personally would like to see is just a little box once you get inside the bed that you can select to say, set my world spawn, or don't set my world spawn. That way you can actually go out exploring, sleep through the night without worrying about the fact that if you die, you're going to respawn thousands of miles away from your base. At this point in time, all light sources that we currently have in Minecraft just shoot out all the light in all directions equally. One thing that I think would be quite cool is if they added a light source that only puts it out in one direction. So we actually have a directional light source, like a spotlight type thing, which we could use inside our build. I mean, imagine how cool that would look. And imagine how cool it would look in Redstone Contraptions. This piston is facing in the wrong direction. I want it to be facing towards me. Now, obviously, in this situation, that's relatively easy, but when you're in a tight redstone circuit, it can be really difficult to place things in the correct orientation. It would be super useful to be able to hold down something like Control or Alt and right-click on a rotatable block to actually rotate it. Now, I definitely think this should be in creative mode. I'm still in two minds about introducing it in survival. So right now, I am in survival mode, and I'm standing on top of a magma block, but because I'm holding shift, I'm not taking any damage. As soon as I come off shift, I start to take damage. I mean, yeah, that's one of those things that really should change. At this point in time, this is the maximum number of blocks a piston can push in Minecraft. If we add one more block into the mix, you can see that this thing no longer works. Now, I don't think the block push limit should change. I think it should stay as it is, but I think it should be introduced as a game rule. For example, we can change the random tick speed of the game, we can turn off the weather cycle, we can turn off the day cycle. It would be cool to be able to type in /game rule block push limit and set it to 300, so then we could build insane, massive slime block flying machines. You could also, if you really wanted to, set it to 1 block, so pistons can only push 1 block at a time. Now that would be an interesting challenge to take on. When you're creating a new super flat world, it can be a little bit tricky to actually make it how you want it to. If we go inside the presets, the way that we set this quartz world is to type something like this into the top bar. Now, of course, there are some presets that are already in the game, but it'd be really nice to have a fully customizable section so that you can set up the super flat world exactly how you want it to be. Sometimes it can be really difficult to find the items that you need. For example, I've been looking for gravel for ages and I don't seem to be able to find any. It'd be really cool if we had some form of search bar that we have in our inventory that allows us to type in, for example, gravel up there. It would then highlight anything in our inventory, but also if we right click on a chest, it would then highlight it in the chest as well. That then gets saved until we want to delete it or search for something else. Item frames are great for labeling chests, but they're quite frustrating. You walk up to it and you just want to be able to open the chest, but every single time you click on the front face, you're going to be clicking on the item frame. The only places that you can click are these tiny little holes here, and then the tiny little gap up at the top. It'd be cool if we were able to not click on an item frame unless we're, for example, holding shift or something like that. Speaking of holding shift, it's really useful when you're building. If you're working on some form of structure and you want to make sure that you're not going to fall off the edge of the block, obviously shift is going to be used quite a lot. Now, one thing that I think would be quite handy is if we were to double tap shift and then that would lock us in the shift position. So now I don't have to worry about having to keep my hand on the shift button because it always slips off and I always end up falling off. I can now just continue on with my building without having to worry about this sort of thing happening. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the Elytra are some of my favourite items in Minecraft. Not only do they look absolutely amazing, but also they make travelling incredibly easy. You can go very long distances in short spaces of time and you can scout out huge areas without having to worry about building up pillars and things like that. They've totally changed the way that I play Minecraft. But there is one slight problem that I have with them, and that is durability. When you're flying around and then you suddenly drop out the sky, that can be a little bit scary. So I feel like it would be good to have some form of bar on the screen while you're flying that shows the durability of the Elytra. Now this could be small in the top right hand corner, for example, or it could be more like the Wither's health bar that goes all the way across the top of the screen. Whatever it is, I just like to know when I'm about to die. Actually, staying on the topic of the Elytra, being able to deactivate them them mid-flight is definitely something that I would find a use for. For example, I use flight duration 3 rockets, and that means if I want to get up onto a ledge inside a relatively small room, I shoot it and then have to do some crazy spinny stuff to stop myself from hitting all of the walls. Now, I know I could probably use smaller firework rockets, but it would be great if I could just shoot up, turn off my elytra, and drop onto where I want to go. I gotta say, I was extremely disappointed when I found out that you can't put music discs inside jukeboxes using hoppers and droppers. It would be great if we could have that, because then you could have a shuffling playlist inside your base. You could have a hopper up at the top which drops the discs into the system, and then a hopper underneath which takes the discs out once they finish playing, sends them back through into a little storage system, and it could shuffle them and it will play through at different times. I mean, that would just be great. It would be awesome, and it would make jukeboxes and music discs a lot more useful, because I can't remember the last time I listened to music in Minecraft. Now, this is one of those ones that there's probably a reason why they don't do this. I imagine it's for efficiency. Having lots of maps that automatically update every single time someone places a block could cause some serious issues for computer systems and servers. But it would be nice to not have to go all the way over into these areas to update them, and to not have to take them off the wall, load up those areas, and then put them back on the wall to have them update with the builds that you've been working on. Haste 2 is pretty fantastic. I mean, I use it all the time on the Hermitcraft server, and it's probably one of my favourite beacon buffs out there because it allows you to mine out massive areas in very short spaces of time. But I have to say, it is a little bit frustrating that every single time I want to use it, I have to build myself an enormous beacon and then make sure that there's skylights, and I can't do it underground without having to clear out space above it. It's a little bit tricky. Now, would it be overpowered to have Haste 2 potions? Potentially, but I think it's definitely something to think about. Now, I've been having a lot of fun in some of the later snapshots with the fact that we can now move water sources using pistons, because you can place water inside fence posts and iron bars, and that means that it's actually pushable and pullable. And that has led to creations a little bit like this one. Now, of course, this thing is totally ridiculous, but imagine how cool it would be if we could do this sort of thing with lava. Being able to move lava source blocks would just be crazy. For things like traps, being able to push that sort of thing around, it would be fantastic. Fun fact, you can actually place redstone on top of pistons, and it sort of kind of works. If we flick this lever here, you can see that the redstone very briefly powers the piston, but then unfortunately the redstone gets broken in the process of the piston extending, which means that nothing is powering the piston anymore, so of course it then retracts. Now, despite this being totally useless at this point in time, when it was first introduced into the game a couple updates ago, I got extremely excited because I thought it meant that Mojang were working on it and they were going to give us redstone on top of pistons. But since then, nothing has happened. Nothing new has been added. It's still exactly the same in all of the latest updates. So I feel like this is definitely something that needs some work, because I mean, can you imagine how useful that would be? Have you ever noticed that Minecraft is actually a pretty dark game? I mean, this is my storage system on the Hermitcraft server, and even though I've got glowstone and all sorts of light sources all over the place, it still looks relatively dark and dingy. It's very difficult to make a place look bright and light. Now, even though I have my settings set to the maximum brightness, I feel like we need an extra 50% that we can add on there just to increase the brightness a little bit, because when you're in dark spots, I mean, you can't even see. Now, this one was originally suggested by Iskal, but I definitely agree with him, and that is the fact that we should have the ability to stop mobs from spawning without having to light up an entire area. Now, it would have to be ridiculously end game. We were talking about the idea of having beacons in 4 different corners of an area with the top tier level pyramids to be able to activate this thing, but what it would allow us to do is build with darkness. You could make use of dark spots and light spots in your builds to actually add depth to them. It would make things look absolutely amazing, but as I say, would have to be ridiculously end game. Now, I'm currently playing with a mod called Optifine, which enhances the game and allows it to run smoother, but also it has an option inside called dynamic lighting, which means that when you're holding a light emitting object, for example a torch, it will light up the area around you. Now, I will just say that it's not actually lighting up the blocks. If we look at the light level, it's still a 0, but it just gives us the impression of them being brighter, which, I mean, that makes total sense, and I definitely feel like it's something that should be introduced into the game, because look at it. I mean, it just feels a lot more immersive this way. You know what's really frustrating about playing in survival mode? Not the fact that you have to gather resources, because that's great fun. Not the fact that you have to deal with mobs and stop them from killing you, because that's also part of the game. but the fact that I can't place a block underneath the block that I'm standing on without it being a massive pain in the backside. In creative mode, all I have to do is something like this, but in survival, especially if it's high up, you have to pillar all the way up, and then you have to place the block underneath, then you have to take down that pillar, and then somehow make your way back up to the block. It's really frustrating, and I have no clue how they'd implement this. Maybe holding Control or Alt while you right click could place it underneath, or you can have some form of different setup where the block goes invisible, then you can click on the bottom side. I don't really know, but it would be lovely. I mean, imagine how much easier that would make survival building. Those last few tweaks have been pretty huge. I mean, massively game-changing tweaks. So let's take it back down to earth and make it clear that I really would like to be able to place redstone on top of sea lanterns. I mean, you can place it on top of glowstone. Where's the love for sea lanterns? Glowstone's useful inside redstone circuits, but sea lanterns look so much nicer. I want to be able to use sea lanterns inside my redstone circuitry. Now, the one thing that I really like about the Windows 10 and mobile versions of Minecraft is the fact that you can push chests and droppers and things like that. That is so cool. I mean, the ability to do that is pretty revolutionary, and you're able to create all sorts of different things. I've made cycling storage systems in Windows 10 version of Minecraft, which is completely bonkers. I mean, it's an interesting game mechanic, and I definitely feel like it should be in Minecraft, even though I think in the Java version of Minecraft, it's completely impossible without rewriting all of the code for containers, which would be pretty hellish by the sounds of things. Another small tweak, carpets should be able to place flying up in the sky. They shouldn't have to have things underneath them, which would mean that if you were to place a system like this, the carpet wouldn't pop off. I mean, I don't really fully understand why the carpet pops off in that situation anyway, but it does seem to. So that's a small change that I'd like made, because having redstone contraptions underneath carpets would be really handy. At this point in time, a hopper will always take from below before it pushes across. So if we were to place a bunch of items inside this chest right here, they'll go through the hoppers, none of them will go into this chest, and all of them will end up in this bottom chest. Now, this is not something that I want changed because it makes total sense and it works reliably. But it would be quite cool to be able to set push priority or pull priority inside the hopper, maybe using a toggle over here. So if it's set to push priority, then it will push across before it gets pulled from the bottom. That would definitely be quite useful in a lot of redstone circuits. And for the final tweak of today's video, villagers. I really want them to change how we move villagers, because at this point in time, there really isn't any way that you can move them. I mean, you can push them around like this. If you can get them inside a boat, then you can move them via boat on land, which makes no sense whatsoever. You can kind of get them into a minecart, but it's quite tricky, and people who are new to the game are definitely going to struggle with that sort of thing. There really isn't a reliable way to get a villager from a village into your villager storage system. Now, I personally think you should be able to use leads on them. That makes sense to me. But also, if you don't like that, maybe some form of bribery system, in that if you give them enough emeralds, then they'll follow you around for a certain amount of time until they get bored of you. That could be a potential option. So there we go, that rounds up today's video on 25 tweaks that I personally would like to see in Minecraft. I've actually been thinking about this video for a very long time. It's been on my mind for months, and I've been taking notes of various different things that pop up over my time playing on the Hermitcraft server and obviously working on Redstone Contraptions, but I'm sure I've missed some, so let me know your thoughts down in the comment section and various different tweaks that you would like to see in the game. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please sure to hit that like button, and if you really loved it, then make sure to subscribe. But thanks for watching, guys. This has been Mumbo, and I'm out. I'll see you later. Oh, and as per usual, check out the latest film on the filming channel. Link will be on the end screen.